Let me ask you something. If you could talk to the 80-year-old version of yourself, what would you ask them? Would you ask about money, about career success, or would you ask about happiness, fulfillment, and the things that made life worth living here? I am 80 years old, with a lifetime of stories and even more questions. I'm rich, yes, financially. I've done well for myself, but money isn't everything. Not by a long shot today. I want to tell you about the choice I wish I'd made when I was your age. If I could go back, I'd trade my mortgage payments, my white picket fence, and my so-called stability for a passport full of stamps and a heart full of adventures. Let me take you back to when I was 25. I just gotten a stable job, a decent paycheck. And like everyone around me, I thought the next step was obvious: buy a house. Everyone called it the American dream, what the Australian dream. Depending on where you're from, it was the ultimate sign of success. But let me tell you what, they didn't mention the dream came with chains, the mortgage payments, the constant repairs, the endless cycle of improving something that in the end was just a structure. It's funny, isn't it? We're told to build a house, but no one tells us to build a life. And so I worked, I saved, I invested in that house thinking it was my ticket to a good life. But what I didn't realize was that it wasn't freedom. It was a trap, a beautiful brick-and-mortar trap. Now, don't get me wrong, having a home isn't a bad thing, but what I didn't see back then was what I was giving up in exchange. Every dollar that went into that house was a dollar I didn't spend on a plane ticket, on an experience, on something that could have made me richer in ways no bank account ever could. You see, when you buy a house, you don't just tie up your money, you tie up your time, your energy, your freedom. Suddenly you can't just pick up and go. You can't wake up one morning and decide, I want to see the pyramids. You have to worry about the roof, the plumbing, the lawn. I'll never forget the day. A friend of mine called me from India. He'd been traveling for months. He told me about the markets in Delhi, the sunsets in Goa, the people he met who changed his life. And you know what I was doing? While he was having those adventures, I was fixing a clog. A drain. That's what I traded my youth for. Let me ask you, does that sound like a fair trade to you? Travel is more than just a vacation, it's a masterclass in life. Every country, every culture, every person you meet, it's like a new chapter in a book you can't put down. You know, I didn't travel much when I was young, but the few times I did, it changed me in ways I never expected. Like the time I went to Italy for a business trip. I stayed an extra day, just one day, and wandered the streets of Rome. I got lost, and in that moment, standing in some tiny pizza with a gelato in hand, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Freedom travel strips you down to your essentials. It reminds you of what truly matters. It's not the square footage of your house or the car in your driveway. It's the people you meet, the stories you share, the memories you carry with you. One of the biggest lies we tell ourselves is that we'll travel later. I'll go when I've saved enough. I'll go when the kids are grown. I'll go when I retire. But here's the truth. Later doesn't always come. I've seen it happen. Friends of mine who work their whole lives waiting for retirement to live their dreams, and then just when they were ready, life had other plans, building responsibilities, circumstances they never saw coming. Don't make the mistake of thinking you have all the time in the world, because you don't. And trust me, when you're 80, you won't be thinking about the house you owned or the mortgage you paid off. You'll be thinking about the things you didn't do, the places you didn't see, the adventures you didn't have. You know what people love most about talking to me? It's not the financial advice, the career tips, or the lessons on success. It's the stories, like the time I spent a single night in Paris, sitting by the S with a bottle of wine and a stranger who became a lifelong friend, or the time I visited a tiny village in Japan and was invited to join a local festival. Me, a clueless tourist dancing alongside them, like I belong there. Those are the moments that matter. Those are the moments that stay with you. And if you don't have stories like that when you're 80, What's the point of it all? Let's talk about money because I know that's on your mind. People say travel is expensive, and yes, it can be. But so is a house, so is a car, so is anything worth having. But here's the difference. The returns on travel are immeasurable. You gain knowledge, perspective, friendships, memories. You invest in yourself in a way that no stock or property ever could. When you travel, you're not just spending money. You're buying moments, the kind of moments that make life rich, that fill your heart, that stay with you forever. So here's my advice from one old soul to another. If you're standing at a crossroads trying to decide whether to settle down or set out, choose the road that leads to the world. Choose the one that scares you, excites you, challenges you. Because at the end of your life, you won't regret the things you did. You'll regret the things you didn't do, and trust me, you don't want to be sitting in a chair like this, wondering what it would have been like to see the northern lights, to walk the Great Wall, to swim in the oceans of the world. The world is waiting for you. Go, don't wait until it's too late.